More than 2,600 years ago, in the ruins of a fallen empire, a man knelt on the floor of a foreign room and asked a simple question: when would it end? He was not asking about his own life. He was not asking about his suffering. He was asking about his people, his city, his God. Jerusalem had been burned. The temple had been torn down, stone by stone. The songs of worship had been replaced by the shouts of soldiers and the crackle of fire. And the people of Israel had been dragged across the desert in chains. His name was Daniel. He had been taken as a teenager when Babylon first invaded Judah. He had watched kings rise and fall. He had served under Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, and now Darius. He had interpreted dreams, survived lions, and stood unbending in a culture determined to erase his faith. But now, decades later, he was an old man, and the weight of prophecy was pressing down on him. Daniel was not guessing. He was not speculating. He was reading the words of the prophet Jeremiah. 70 years. That was the number God had given. 70 years of captivity. 70 years before restoration. 70 years before Jerusalem would breathe again. Daniel had counted. The years were almost complete, and yet Jerusalem was still in ruins. The temple was still ash. The people were still scattered. So Daniel did what men of faith have always done when the numbers don't line up with reality. He prayed, he fasted, he wept, he confessed, not just his own sins, but the sins of an entire nation. He put on sackcloth, he sat in ashes, and he poured out his soul before the God of heaven. Daniel 9 tells us he prayed for mercy, he prayed for forgiveness, he prayed for restoration, he prayed for Jerusalem. And while he was still speaking, while the words were still on his lips, something happened. The atmosphere changed. The room was no longer empty. The air itself seemed to move, and a being entered the space who did not belong to earth. Gabriel, an angel, a messenger sent from the throne of God. And Gabriel did not come with comfort. He came with a calendar. He did not come with poetry. He came with precision. He did not come with symbols and beasts and riddles. He came with numbers, exact numbers, measured numbers, a countdown. Daniel had asked about 70 years. God answered with 490. 70 weeks. Not weeks of days, weeks of years. 7 times 70. 490 years. And within that time, Gabriel said, everything would change. Sin would be dealt with. Iniquity would be addressed. Righteousness would be established. The Messiah would appear. Not vaguely, not someday, not eventually, but on schedule, on time, to the day. What Daniel was about to receive was unlike anything any prophet had ever been given. Isaiah spoke of suffering. Micah spoke of Bethlehem.
Zechariah spoke of betrayal. David spoke of crucifixion. But Daniel was given something different. He was given a date. Not in modern terms, not in our calendar, but in God's. And when history finally caught up with that prophecy, the world would never be the same. Because this was not a guess. This was not symbolism. This was not religious poetry. This was a countdown, and it was accurate to the exact day. The question is not whether the prophecy exists. The question is whether history answered it. And to find that answer, we have to go back to a pagan king, a devastated city, and a decree that would quietly start the clock of redemption. A countdown is meaningless without a starting point. Numbers without an anchor drift in the air like mist. 490 years only matter if you know when the first second begins. And Gabriel was precise. He did not leave Daniel guessing. He did not leave room for interpretation. He gave a trigger, a moment in history, a royal command, a decree. Daniel 9:25 records his words, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem," not the temple, not worship, not sacrifices, the city, the streets, the walls, the gates, Jerusalem. That was the starting gun, when a Persian king signed a piece of parchment giving permission to rebuild a broken city. Heaven's clock would begin to tick. But history complicates things, because there wasn't just one decree. There were four. Four Persian kings, four documents, four moments that could, at first glance, seem like the fulfillment, and choosing the wrong one collapses the entire prophecy. The first came from Cyrus in 538 BC. He allowed the Jews to return. He authorized the rebuilding of the temple. Ezra records it. Isaiah had even named Cyrus 150 years before he was born. But Cyrus spoke of the house of God, not the city. The second came from Darius in 520 BC. He reaffirmed Cyrus's decree. Again, the focus was the temple, not the streets, not the walls. The third came from Artaxerxes in 458 BC. He sent Ezra with authority, judicial power, religious autonomy. Important, but still not the city. Then comes the fourth, the one that matches Gabriel's words exactly. The year was 445 BC. Nehemiah was serving as cupbearer to King Artaxerxes, a trusted position, a dangerous position. If the king was poisoned, Nehemiah died first. One day, news reached him from Jerusalem. The walls were still broken, the gates were still burned, the people were still exposed, and Nehemiah did something unthinkable. He wept in the presence of the king. In ancient courts, sadness before the king was a capital offense, but Artaxerxes noticed, and he asked. Nehemiah too records the moment. "Why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart." Nehemiah was afraid, but he spoke. He told the king about the city of his fathers, the ruins, the disgrace, and then he asked, "If it please the king, send me unto Judah, that I may build it." What was built? The city, not the temple, the walls, the gates, the urban structure. And the text says something astonishing. The king granted me. Letters were written, timber was ordered, an escort was assigned. The decree went out. Jerusalem would rise again. This was not vague permission, this was official authorization, and historians can date it. The 20th year of Artaxerxes, the month of Nisan, 445 BC. This is not theological guesswork, this is Persian history. This is the moment.
This is the trigger. This is when the clock started. And Gabriel had said from this point to the Messiah would be 69 weeks, 7 weeks and 62 weeks, 49 years and 434 years, 483 years total. Not rounded, not approximate, exact. But now the math becomes critical, because the Bible does not use modern solar years, it uses prophetic years, 360 days, 12 months of 30 days. We know this because Daniel and Revelation repeatedly equate 1,260 days with 42 months. Simple, consistent, prophetic time. So, 483 prophetic years multiplied by 360 days equals 173,880 days. This is not theology. This is arithmetic. Count them day by day.
from the decree in Nisan 445 BC forward. And when you convert prophetic years into solar years, accounting for leap years, accounting for calendar transitions, accounting for the absence of a year zero, the math lands on one moment, one season, one day, spring in Jerusalem. The city would be crowded, the gates would be open, pilgrims would be singing, and a man would be riding a donkey. But before we go there, before we reach that moment, we need to understand something. No one in Daniel's time could have imagined this. No one in Babylon knew about crucifixion. No one in Persia knew about Rome. No one in Jerusalem knew about Pontius Pilate. Yet the schedule was already written. Empires would rise and fall, languages would change, borders would shift, but the date would remain fixed. And this is where history becomes uncomfortable, because if the math is right, then the Messiah did not come in the Middle Ages, he did not come in the future, he did not come secretly, he came on schedule, right on time. And when he arrived, the city was ready, even if the people were not. Jerusalem in spring was unlike any other place on earth. The population would swell to nearly 5 times its normal size. Pilgrims poured in from Galilee, Judea, Perea, Idumea, and beyond. The roads were packed, the inns were full, the city was alive with anticipation. Passover was approaching, the feast of deliverance, the remembrance of blood on doorposts, the night death passed over. And Rome was nervous. Every year at Passover, nationalist fever surged. Every year, whispers of rebellion grew louder. Every year, Pontius Pilate left Caesarea and brought extra troops to Jerusalem. The streets were thick with soldiers, armor glinting in the sun, spears in hand, eyes watching everything. It was a city on edge. And into that tension, into that crowd, into that moment, he came. Not on a war horse, not with an army, not with banners or blades, on a donkey, exactly as Zechariah had said. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, lowly, riding upon an ass. Jesus of Nazareth. For 3 years he had walked the dusty roads of Israel. He had healed lepers, he had opened blind eyes, he had calmed storms, he had raised the dead. And again he had said, My time is not yet come. When crowds tried to make him king, he vanished. When demons cried out his identity, he silenced them. When the Pharisees confronted him, he withdrew. He moved on a schedule no one could see, until this day. Luke 19 tells us what happened. They brought the colt, they laid their garments on it, they set Jesus upon it, and as he went, they spread their clothes in the road. Branches were cut, palm leaves waved, voices rose, Hosanna! Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord.
They were quoting Psalm 118, a messianic psalm, a declaration of identity. They were calling him the Messiah, publicly, loudly, openly, and Jesus did not stop them. For the first time in his ministry, he allowed it. The Pharisees were horrified. They demanded he silence the crowd, and Jesus answered with a sentence that only makes sense in light of Daniel. I tell you, if these should hold their peace, the stones would cry out. Why? Because that day was fixed. It was scheduled. It was appointed. It could not pass quietly. 483 prophetic years earlier, Gabriel had told Daniel when this would happen, from the decree to the Messiah. And now the Messiah was here, not metaphorically, not spiritually, physically, riding through the gate. And here is the part that is almost impossible to ignore.
Jesus wept. As the crowd celebrated, he cried. Luke 19:41 records it. And when he was come near, he beheld the city and wept over it. Why would a king weep on his coronation day? Because they missed it, because they didn't understand the time, because they didn't recognize the schedule. He said, "If thou hadst known, even thou, at least in this thy day, the things which belong unto thy peace." But now they were hidden, hidden from the ones who should have known, hidden from the teachers of the law, hidden from the keepers of the scriptures. They had Daniel, they had the prophecy, they had the numbers, but they did not see the moment. And Jesus knew what was coming. He knew the cheers would turn to shouts. He knew the palms would turn to fists. He knew the city would soon reject its king, and he knew what that rejection would cost. This was not just a triumphal entry, it was a deadline. The clock had reached zero. He had arrived exactly when Daniel was told he would, not late, not early, on time, to the day. Sir Robert Anderson, a 19th century investigator trained in forensic precision, later calculated the dates using Persian records and astronomical data. From March 14th, 445 BC to April 6th, AD 32, 173,880 days, exactly. No rounding, no margin, no flexibility. History hit the prophecy on the nose. And if that does not stop you, if that does not make you pause, then nothing will. Because no other religious text on earth offers that. No other sacred writing dares to give a date. No other prophet pinned God to a calendar. And yet Daniel did, and God honored it. But Gabriel's message did not end with arrival. It continued with something far darker, because the angel had said the Messiah would come, and then he would be cut off, not for himself. Cut off, a judicial term, an execution, a violent removal. The king would be killed. The crowd did not know it yet. The disciples did not understand it yet. But heaven had already written it, and within days the cheers would turn into a chant, not Hosanna, but crucify him. 5 days, that is all it took. 5 days from celebration to condemnation. 5 days from palm branches to wooden beams. 5 days from blessed is the King to we have no king but Caesar. The same city, the same streets, the same people, but a completely different atmosphere. Jesus had entered Jerusalem as the promised Messiah. He left it as a condemned criminal, and Gabriel had already said it would happen. After the 62 weeks, the Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. Cut off. The Hebrew word is yikaret,
A legal term. A word used in court judgments. A sentence of death. Not symbolic, not spiritual, physical execution. And not for himself, not for his own crimes, not for his own guilt, not for his own sins, for others. Isaiah had seen it. Wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. Daniel was given the timing, Isaiah was given the meaning, and history provided the method: Roman crucifixion, a form of execution designed to humiliate, torture, and erase. The Son of God was betrayed with a kiss, arrested in the dark, abandoned by his friends, mocked by soldiers, scourged until his back was unrecognizable. A crown of thorns pressed into his skull, blood running down his face. They dressed him in purple, they laughed, they spat,
"Prophesy," they said. "Who hit you?" The Messiah stood silent, not because he was powerless, because he was willing, because the schedule required it, because the prophecy demanded it, because the sins of others were being laid on him. And then they led him outside the walls, to a place called Golgotha, the place of a skull, the execution site, the hill of death. They laid him on the wood. They drove the nails through his wrists. They pinned his feet. They lifted the cross, and the Messiah was cut off, not for himself, for you, for me, for every failure, every rebellion, every hidden sin. Darkness fell at noon. The sky itself reacted. Creation responded. And when he cried, "It is finished," the earth shook. The veil in the temple tore, top to bottom, not bottom to top, as if invisible hands ripped it open. The barrier between God and man was gone. The sacrificial system ended in a single moment. No more lambs, no more blood, no more shadows. The true sacrifice had been made, exactly as Gabriel said. Finish the transgression, make an end of sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness. It happened at the cross, not gradually, not symbolically, legally, cosmically, eternally. And 3 days later, the tomb was empty, the stone was moved, death had failed, the Messiah had risen. But the prophecy was not finished, because Gabriel had said something else. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Not immediately, but inevitably. The rejection of the Messiah would have consequences, and history would not delay. Within a generation, the city that shouted, "Crucify him," would be burning. The temple that rejected him would be dismantled. The nation that missed its moment would be scattered. Jesus had warned them. He had wept over them. He had said, "Not one stone shall be left upon another," and they had laughed. But heaven does not bluff. 40 years, that was all the city had. 40 years from rejection to ruin. 40 years from "Crucify him" to complete destruction. 40 years from prophecy to ash. The year was AD 66 when the rebellion began. Jewish zealots, tired of Roman taxes, Roman soldiers, and Roman control, rose up. They drove the garrison from Jerusalem. They declared independence. For a moment, it worked. But Rome does not forget, and Rome does not forgive. Vespasian was sent with legions. Towns fell. Villages burned. Resistance was crushed. Then, in AD 70, his son Titus arrived. 4 legions surrounded Jerusalem. No one in, no one out. A wall was built around the city, just as Jesus had said. Famine came first. People boiled leather. They ate grass. They fought over scraps. Josephus, the Jewish historian who witnessed it, recorded mothers eating their own children. Bodies filled the streets.
The stench of death hung in the air. And then the Romans broke through. The temple was set on fire. Gold melted. Stone cracked. Soldiers tore the building apart to retrieve the molten metal, exactly as Jesus had said. Not one stone left upon another. The sanctuary was gone. Jerusalem was a furnace, and Gabriel's words were fulfilled. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Rome did it, not Babylon, not Persia, not Greece, Rome. And Israel was scattered. 1 million dead, tens of thousands enslaved, the nation dissolved. 2,000 years of exile began, and the world changed. The sacrifice system ended forever. The priesthood collapsed. The temple was gone. The old covenant structure was physically dismantled. And yet, 1 week remained. 7 years. The 70th week. 69 were fulfilled with precision. The decree, the countdown, the Messiah, the crucifixion, the destruction. But the prophecy said 70. Where is the last one? This is where history ends and theology begins. Some say it already happened. Some say it is happening now. Some say it is still future. 3 major views. One sees the final week fulfilled in the early church, Christ confirming the covenant, the gospel going first to Israel. Another sees a prophetic pause, a gap, a parenthesis, Israel set aside, the church age inserted, and the final week still ahead, a future covenant, a future ruler, a future betrayal, a future abomination. Jesus himself pointed forward. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, future, not past, still coming. The last week is unfinished. The clock is paused, but it will start again. And when it does, it will be just as precise as the first 69. Because God does not change. Because heaven does not improvise. Because prophecy is not suggestion. It is schedule. And that is the weight of Daniel 9. Not that it was mysterious, but that it was accurate, to the day. 5 centuries before Jesus was born, a Jewish exile in Babylon was given the calendar of redemption, and history obeyed it. The decree went out, the years passed, the Messiah came, the Messiah was cut off, the city was destroyed, exactly as written. No religion on earth has this. No philosophy dares this. No myth risks this. Only Scripture, only Daniel, only the God who sees the end from the beginning. And now the question turns to you. If the first 69 weeks were fulfilled with mathematical precision, what does that say about the 70th? If God kept the first appointment, will he miss the last? If the Messiah came exactly on time, will the final events be any different? Daniel prayed for 70 years. God showed him 490. Sometimes when we ask God small questions, he gives us eternal answers. And now you know, the countdown was real, the date was real, the fulfillment was real. The only thing left is the future, and it is already written.